Welcome to the Dwayne Kerrigan podcast, and I'm your host, Dwayne Kerrigan. With 35 years in business and close to 30 ventures across 12 industries, I've seen a lot. Amid the celebrity allure of entrepreneurship, many exceptional entrepreneurs remain shadowed. Here, I team up with these hidden talents to unveil their challenges and successes. Dive in with me to unearth entrepreneurial gems, learn from our experiences, and get educated. How do you define courage? Because I think sometimes people see courage as like, well, I'm not courageous. Like I don't run into a burning building, or I haven't been in the military. It's like, that's not what this is about.
That's not what it is.
Yeah.
No, it's not. No.
But I'm curious on your definition.
To me, courage, I mean, it's a label to say that you're going to have the guts to make the decision that is the best in the circumstances when you're taking it, given the greater goal you're trying to achieve, ultimately for the organization you work for. So is it to have a tough conversation with someone that you fundamentally like, but that, is going in the wrong direction vis-a-vis what he or she is doing in his area of expertise, given what we're trying to achieve as an organization? Maybe. Is it to, sometimes it means you have to let go of someone because it's not working, because the person is fantastic, smart, bright, best CV possible, but doesn't fit with what is it that we're trying to do. That's difficult. And when you are, I guess, when you're leading an organization, and when you're part of the leadership group of an organization, because, as part of that leadership team, people look at you and they're going to look at, what decision are they making? What decision is she making? And you can be judged for that. And sometimes this will stop people because they're not going to have the courage to be labeled with that tough decision that they've made, because it's not a popular decision. But again, it's not that we want to run the business, internally, making decisions that are not popular. That's not the point. I want to make the best decisions possible here, that everyone will think, my God, this is terrific. What a great decision. What a great deal. What a great this and that. But yes, sometimes you've got to make decisions that are less popular, but they are in the best interest of the organization, ultimately. Yeah. And I'm even going to add, Wayne, because, again, I go back to what I said like 5 minutes ago. As an individual, you want to be liked, and you want to be liked. But at the same time, what gives you the courage to make those tough decisions sometimes, despite the fact that you want to be liked in the first place as a human being, is the fact that you have the conviction that it's the right decision ultimately. And that's what it is.
This goes back actually to when you said, Jeff is like really calm and he's really easy to deal with. And I had this like thought of like two words, which was, one was intensity and versus standards. I don't know Jeff. I've never met him. But even for you, more so for you really, is, I'm sure you can be intense. We all can be at some level.
Quite.
How do you balance intensity with standards, and how has that evolved for you over your leadership career? So standards being like, having a standard for yourself, for your operations, for the product, for the business, for the culture, versus like, I guess it's kind of like, this, leading with a level of intensity versus leading with this level of standard.
Yeah. I guess I would make a difference between the standard and the elegance that you're trying to maintain, yet the intensity, but then, managing your emotion through it all, right? I think that's what it is. Yeah. So yeah, you can be very intense, you can be very adamant, motivated, and determined to get something done. But at the same time, like, there is definitely there's a standard where, it's one thing for you to want something very much, but I mean, hopefully we do things elegantly, right? Firmly, with determination, but elegantly. Yeah, and I don't know if the word elegant works, but yes.
No, it does.
I mean, you can have a very firm conversation, and you can be very determined in what is it that you want out of it, and the message can be difficult to hear for the person hearing the message, but you can still do it in a very calm and collected way.
Yeah, I love that. Like, I actually like the distinction in the word elegant versus, emotional.
Yeah,
And
emotion is pretty bad,
yeah,
actually.
yeah.
Yeah. It's funny that I still bring my dad up, but it's je te dis, like at the outset, like he's always said, and now I say it, and this is stuff I will tell my daughters, like no matter how you feel inside, like if you get he used to tell me, if you get mad, if you're talking with someone or whatever it is, negotiation or whatever it is, if you are into a conversation and you get mad, you lost. You're negotiating, you're expressing different point of views. The minute that you, France, is getting mad or angry or whatever, you lost. Might as well give up right now because this other person that managed to get you in that position won. I'm not suggesting that I never like I mean I have emotion, like am I are we sometimes annoyed, are we sometimes like whatever it is, 100%. But at the end of the day, when it really counts, ultimately when it really counts, I always remember that. And so, I mean, are we mad with traffic going somewhere where all the roads are blocked and you're going in circle for 15 minutes? Yes, it's annoying, and very impatient, like, driving in Montreal, no doubt. But does that really count when it's me and me in my car? No, it doesn't count. But when it really matters, you can't let the emotions take over.
It's the ultimate control. If somebody can influence your emotion into, especially into anger,
You're done.
they are now in control of you.
They're in full control of you. And it's true in everything. In a personal relationship, it's like at home, at the office, it's true everywhere. When it counts, you should never let that happen.
So how do you get that back? Because what just popped into my head was like, actually, when you said at home, I was like, yeah, those damn kids, they.
Yeah, I'm not suggesting it's always perfect.
Yeah, no, and it's not. Well, and it's like, to me, one of the things that I've worked on over the last decade really hard at is reducing the amount of time that my emotion takes over, but also reducing the time and distance between when it happens. And so, like, if it may happen, but it only happens for 30 seconds or something, and I'll feel it and I'll be like, wait a second, this is like, what are some of the things that you've learned, like, or even just one thing, one nugget of how you give yourself that space or time to settle and, so that you don't get emotional or fall into that trap of somebody drawing you into anger?
Yeah. I would never bring myself from a business standpoint in a situation where I kind of derail of this behavior I want to show up with, because I can't.
Is that because your identity is so curated and so solid as who you show up as a leader?
That's who I am, and that's who I want to be, and given everything that we've talked about, like kind of uh, like being too emotional, like showing up too much of like anger is too big of a word for me. Like I would never display that anyways. But like it's not the person I am. It's not the person I am and I want to be. And it's certainly not because I'm not that, and I don't want to be that. I don't want to show people that I'm that because it's not who I am. And on top of that, I would never want let anyone be able to say, "Oh my God, like what was that?" Like never. It's just not happening. I will leave. Like I would. I've never been in that situation, but then I think your initial question was, how do you make sure that you're not in that situation, or it doesn't happen, or you don't end up there? I just don't. But if I felt that for whatever reason it's about to happen, I'd leave. I would just, I don't know. I think I would leave. It would not happen.
Well, I think what really hit me was like the certainty in how you made the statement of "I will never do that." Like it was like it's just not going to happen. It's like
It's not gonna happen.
like there's just you've made that an intolerable in your life, and it's like if you want to know the things that are, kind of mismanaged in your life, look at the things that you tolerate. Whatever you tolerate is how your life is. And whatever you make intolerable, which you've made this absolutely intolerable.
No, and I'm old enough to know that. Like, no.
Yeah, it's just, I don't even know if it was when. Is it an age thing, or is it just?
No, I
Because I
don't.
think you were probably just.
No, exactly. No, it's not an age thing, but like, I've been in situations over the past. Like, I've started working. I don't know. I was 20 something. Like, so now I've had enough experience to know that. First of all, when you represent a client, like back at Stagman Elliott, if you represent a client, like, are you going to be? You can't. You just can't be mad at, like, in front of the other party. Like, you are there to represent the interest of someone. You think they're paying you to be mad and show your emotion? It doesn't work. It's kind of unfitting. So you can't be that. Like, it's just a no-go. So start with that also, and then this is how you evolve as a professional. No way.
Your beginning days with Stelgman, and just the influence that had, and that, I don't want to call it like tightrope, but these, like, it's like, there's what goes back to what's tolerable, what's intolerable, and they, have, there's a set of like rules or guidelines, or like, this is how it is, and you sink or swim. And it's like, do you think sometimes, like, we have a little bit too much gray in the world of whether it's in the education system? Like, where do you think the fine line is in all that? Because
No, I'm not black or white. Like, I think there's a lot of gray, and I can tolerate a lot of gray, because it's I don't think that things are that finite always. I think there's a lot of subtleties and all that. It's so complex. Like, right now, the world is so complex on many different fronts, right? Politically, I mean, like, just like, I pay attention a bit to what's going on in Ontario, but like here in this province, like, there's so many things. Like, you look at what's going on, and it's a bit discouraging. Like, there's so many things that are not working, like, on many different fronts. But no, I think there's still space for a lot of gray and all that. But I mean, I'm not there to solve, like, all the problems in this province. But back to the courage, we would need politicians with a lot of courage, and some of them have a lot of courage. Again, and then if you tie it back to, what's best for your organization, what's best for your province, is it best for the province, this decision you're about to make, or is it best for the party and for you and for, the votes that you're about to try to get? So, anyways, this is a bit of a detour.
no, but it's leadership, right? It's I think it's an extension of leadership. It's just politics is a different organization, and there are a lot of, this is where the problem, I think, actually is originates, is that, there lacks that vision and unity of accomplishing a goal. And we don't, like, I would say, like, one of the things that probably, based on my reflection, and we spend a lot more time in the US now. So I only say that because I'm a little bit more distant than I have been in the past from what's happening politically in the country. But it's like, we don't necessarily have a set vision. And whether you agree with it or you don't, we just don't. It just seems like, it's like, what's the vision? What are we doing? Like, where's the leadership? And then if we can just create a vision, get the right leaders in place to execute a plan towards that vision.
And I recognize that it's very, very complex, and there's so many things. Like, what's the objective? What is it you want? But there's facts. There are facts that are not lying, right? In terms of, like, our productivity here. Like, when you compare ourselves, like, GDP, productivity, and all that. Like, it's tough. So I don't know, Dwayne, if you were thinking about jumping and try to make a difference at that level, but like, it's something.
Yeah. If I thought I could, it's actually been, not in any serious level, but I've talked to other people who we have a mutual friend.
Yeah, I think we have a mutual friend
that we've talked about it before, but it's the, I had a friend that was going to jump into politics, successful in business, also in Ontario. I wouldn't say that I have not ever thought about it, but I don't see the path. I don't personally see the path to be able to influence in a way that would make it greater than you could do in business or in, outside of the leadership role. Like there's so many things happening behind the scenes that it's tough.
You know, from the outside looking in, like it's very easy to sort of try to think that you'd make a difference or criticize a bit like how things are being done. So I'm sure it's extremely complex. I'm sure there's just so many ramifications and all that. But
Here would be, I guess, my question around that, and I think you guys, what you're doing here, is actually a pretty good potential example of what is possible in a big organization with a very passionate fan base.
100%.
Is like, because we were talking about one of the things I had circled here that we haven't gotten back to, and I wanted to get back to it, and this actually leads us back to it, because we were talking about culture, and you shared about experience and the level of excellence, and all that conversation about culture. But there was one thing that I had circled that I wrote down was product. Like there's the experience of coming to the rink for the game,
Right.
but there's also the product that you're putting on the shelf, if you will. For you guys, you're putting on the ice. And that's something that you guys have really been working on in the last 3 years. Is it
Yeah.
3 years?
It all started November 28, 2021. This is when we did the switch over. Like you're talking about like our rebuild that we've started. Yeah. So November 28, 2021. This is when our owner, Jeff Molson, spoke of like he said, we needed a fresh start, So what that meant is that, there was an overall change in the hockey operations, which is when I'm talking about hockey operations, I'm really talking about like the leaders of the hockey team proper. Like, so you think about the general manager, and then now we have a president of hockey operations, and everything, and then the coach, right? So that's your trio here. And so we were just, in 2021, I'm sure you remember, we were in the playoffs. We managed to eliminate everyone, and then I guess it was Toronto first. I don't wanna remind you of that, Dwayne, but anyways, we did, and then it was Winnipeg, and then it was like Vegas actually, and then we ended up meeting Tampa Bay in the actual Stanley Cup playoffs. And that was just a surreal moment, by the way. Like and you remember, I don't know if you remember, but it was sort of the end of COVID. And so, especially in Quebec, we were locked up in our house. There was like curfew at night. Anyways, it was just something here we had to, it was pretty bad. We had, unfortunately, at the very outset of COVID, we had this very unfortunate situation in many, many senior citizen homes with a lot of people passing, unfortunately, as a result of like that COVID thing spreading like terribly. And so it was very, very bad in this province. So anyway, so measures were pretty harsh too. So curfew and all that. So anyhow, during that spring of 2021, we managed to enter the playoffs and start beating different teams, and then we ended up in the Stanley Cup Finals, as I said. And then they beat us. They won the cup, and we lost. And so during that summer, so we played very late in the season, and then during that summer, anyways, a few things happened. And then when we started the season, which was the season 21-22, we started to lose. We were losing. We lost some players. Anyways, it was just a very difficult fall. And then in the end, there was this overall change. Like, so we let go of the many people that were leading that team back then. And so in November of 2021, Jeff made the decision to hire Jeff Gorton, who is currently our president of the hockey operations. He was former GM in New York Rangers, and before that, he worked with the Bruins. And Jeff arrived here, and it was a lockdown again. Like, the minute he arrived, like, I think the government threw us in a lockdown again at the start of December, so it was pretty bad. And then, sure enough, like in January of 22, he hired our new GM. His name is Hughes. He's a gentleman from Beaconsfield. And then on February 9, they hired our new coach, Martin Saint Louis. Marty was just an unbelievable guy, and they all are actually. And then slowly but surely, like we sort of well, I say we, but like these are not my decisions. They were their decisions. Yes. Between Jeff Molson, Jeff Gorton, and Kent Hughes, they've started to completely change our whole hockey operations. changing, the support system around the player, changing, basically they revamp everything going from player development. We finally have an analytics group called the scouting, both on the professional side and also on the amateur side. We have an unbelievable team. So they basically change everything. And then the whole surrounding of players, nutritionists, psychologist support, anyhow. So they change absolutely everything. And now trading players, using draft picks to draft like the best, and we did pretty badly. So the worse you do in the NHL,
The better your
yeah,
draft
the
pick.
better you draft. So
Yeah.
in 22, we had the first draft pick overall. So that means that we finished last the season before. And then, so that was in 22 and 23. We were in the top 5. So anyhow, so very, very, very smart hockey people, Jeff and Kent. And so now fast forward to the fall of 2025. Again, I don't know what's going to happen this season. I know it's 82 games long, and we're not going to win every single game. But
Yeah, but you're 4-for-1.
yeah,
Right?
exactly.
That's a pretty
So
good start.
yeah,
And your preseason was really good too.
Preseason was good. We have an amazing start, we're the youngest team in the NHL actually, and we have so much talent on the ice. Like we have, I'm not going to name these guys because they're all talented, but we have so much talent. But what's most important, I believe, and I think this is the difference maker, is how close these guys are to one another. So that pact mentality, like the fact that you've got, I'm going to name a few players, but super talented players such as a guy named Colt Caulfield, number 13, who's actually he's going to throw himself down on the ice as the talented player that he is to stop a puck from going into our net. Like usually these are the role players doing these sorts of things. But so everyone believes, everyone buys into the culture, back to the culture that Marty St. Louis is trying to, instill into these guys. And so they're going to do, despite the fact that you're supposed to be the guy that is scoring the goals. Well, if the puck is going and you think that it may go in, you're going to throw yourself on the ice to block that shot from the opponent's team.
Yeah, that was last week. Are you talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was him. That
him.
got in the way of the shot, then passes it up and one-time goal.
Well, that's another one. That's Lane
Okay.
Hudson. Lane Hudson, number 48, our defenseman. He won the Calder Trophy last year, by the way. First time since I don't know how many decades in this team that a young defenseman, won that trophy. So basically, we're about to finish the game. This is Thursday night. We're losing. The other team is winning 3-2, and so Martin pulls the goalie. Dobesh goes to the bench. So we've got the sixth player on the ice, and there's a shot from I think it was Marchesso. He's trying to put the puck into our goal where there's no more goalie, and you've got Lane Hudson is there, and somehow he gets the puck, stops the puck, and he makes this most unbelievable pass to Caulfield on the left, who's basically taking this puck and shooting in the net. So with sort of 20 seconds to go, it's 3-3. We go in overtime, and Caulfield again scored. But what I'm saying is that it's this, again, we're going to see where it leads us, but an ingredient that, it's not about the talent. It's not about, it's about the fact, it's total intangible. It's the fact that these guys will do anything to fight for one another and to win for one another. So they're not necessarily on the individual stats. They're not necessarily what about me? It's about what about the team. And I think that Martin St. Louis has done an unbelievable job at instilling that culture of real team amongst these guys. And it's it's going to be a fun season to watch, and many more to come, I believe.
So I would love to pull away, especially for the listeners, the leadership thought process and decision making, and because we've talked a lot about courage, we've talked about
Right.
no excuses. There's been some themes here that you can see from a cultural perspective that the I'll say first the leadership team here has, and then it has then resulted for the Montreal Canadiens as a brand to kind of evolve, and that's just my takeaway, But you come off of a winning season. You get to the, Stanley Cup Finals. Okay, you don't walk away with, with the cup. But that's a hell of a good season and something that you could build upon. But then there's this kind of breakdown, if you will, and so where then comes in the decision, like, okay, we need to rebuild, especially after just making it to the Stanley Cup, like the awareness and the recognizing that, okay, if we're going to do this long term, and actually you're throwing like the stats, nutrition for players, like I just kind of thought that stuff was stable table stakes at this stage, but it obviously needed to be, reignited inside the organization. So I'd love to kind of just dig a little bit into, the leadership side of this, and what it took to take a, successful franchise. Like there's business owners out there right now listening to this that have successful businesses, but they can't get, like, whether they're 3 million, 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, whatever, they can't get to that next level. And there's something there that's holding them back, which clearly was probably some of the impetus to do what you guys have done.
And if I had all the answer, I think it'd be very easy. But again, it's that team made it all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals for a variety of reasons. We had Shea Weber here; he was our captain, and we also had Carey Price, that we called
Cool.
one of the best goalies, obviously, of the decades in the NHL. And we had like a bunch of other elements at that team, and that team decided that they were playing for one another and that they were trying to get it done. Get it done for Shea, get it done for Carey Price to try to win the cup. As a team for these players, these individual players, but winning for, the group, but for them, I think players knew many different things too, that, Shea Weber sort of, like, it was he never played afterwards. And so Carey Price too also stopped playing then. And so, again, many different things happen. A lot of it is like stuff that will stay with the team, but like many things happen. And then, like, at some point, I guess it became obvious to our owner, Jeff Molson, that something would have to take place here, because, like, despite the fact that this had been great all the way to June, July of 21, those key elements, that certain magic that was there during the playoff was not there, no longer, and it was not to come back. Like it was kind of obvious to him, I guess. And so then he started to think, like, how am I going to turn this around, and what am I? Because ultimately, the number one decision, like the guy that is starting this rebuild, like, okay, we're gonna turn on the key to this rebuild. It's him.
Right.
It's him he's the only one that can make that decision. And this team that exists since 1909, and I was not there for all these years, but I think it's the first time in the team history that an official full rebuild is done and was announced. Like, and when Jeff spoke to the media for an hour long, because what happened is that he let go of like a bunch of people at the team level, and then he started to rebuild that. It was his decision. It was him facing the media for a full hour, trying to answer all these questions and having the courage, again, back to the courage, to take that decision, and to the courage and the hope that, he would be able to put the right ingredients together to actually, for this team to turn the corner and to, sort of spring back. And I think that this is where we are now. And the work is far from being done, We need more patience. This team is not, there's more stuff that's going to have to happen at the team level, right? But I think, this team is full of talent, is young, number one, is full of talent. And we signed so many players for like 7 or 8 years. So this team is good until many years to come. And I think it's going to be a good team with, talented players that will only get better on the ice as the years are being added. So, and it was him taking that tough decision at first.
So I'm sitting here thinking and trying to put myself in the listener's position, going, there's a lot of people right now who are in their business. And when I say a lot, I probably would say the majority of listeners who own a business that listen to this podcast because we've heard from them, we're going through this post-COVID kind of lull. Their businesses elevated in COVID. Some of them did not elevate in COVID. If you're in the restaurant business, you're like, this is really. But many businesses in industries that were elevated in COVID now are seeing this like kind of pullback, or this they're not being able to maintain growth. They've built these teams. They made capital investments that put them in a position, and now they're like, holy geez, like we gotta. And so I look at this as a really great example. And so on the leadership side, not necessarily like on the, be like, hey, a business owner loses key people in their organization. And then it's like, holy geez, I got to rebuild. Or they're at this plateau in their business where they're at X sales and they want to, go to the next level of operations. And it requires a different team, a different, maybe you're in the same business, but it requires a different strategy, maybe some, and a different vision. And so I'm curious, on that side of things is like, obviously, and I love, like you said, like first and foremost, it starts with Jeff. And he has to make the tough decision to say, we need to make an overhaul here. And then what are the things then that kind of got batted around in terms of like, okay, how are we going to break this down? Because it's a big job. Like,
it is a big job.
It's a huge
It's
job.
a big job. And, I'm going to add a layer to that. In Quebec, the team occupies between 9 and 10% of all the media space. News coverage. So think of what's going on, like, the whatever is going on in the world, like, now there's municipal election, there's like, what's going on with, the like the war in Ukraine, like our friends in the U.S., with the president. Like, think about all the news happening during a year. Well, I'm not talking about the sports news. I'm talking about the overall news. There's close to 10% that all the news, all the media coverage that is devoted to the team. Could be in July, could be in August, could be in December. It's wild. So it's very much top of mind. This is a huge privilege, I believe, because we're always top of mind, which is great. So when it's going great, it's going really great. It's amplified. And when it's not going so well, then it's also amplified on the other side. So that decision of his, because he was the only one deciding, he owns the team. So he was the only one being able to make that decision to say, we're either sticking around with this group, or we're going to actually change, and we're going to try to start over and build better, stronger for a longer period of time. And it takes guts and it takes courage to make that decision, because everyone cares about hockey. And again, it's a huge privilege for us here in Quebec to be in that position where every time a decision is made at the team level, people will pay attention, people will talk about it, people will want to get an interview, to do so he made that decision, and it was a decision. So, by the way, the business or the organization that is the most mediatized in this province is us. I mean, it goes with the rest, right? So that decision of his was everywhere. Everyone saw the press conference, everyone read about that. So, and it's on him. And Jeff is going nowhere. He's the owner. It's not as if like he's there for 5 years and then he's going to be able to forget about it and move on.
A CEO.
No,
like,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's not as if in 10 years from now he's going to be busy doing something else. Like, and it's his family. Obviously, the Molson family has been associated with the team for, I don't know, I should know the stats, but I think the name Molson has been associated with the team for like, I don't know, like there's 24 Stanley Cups. I think they were associated with the team for more than the majority of the cups. So there's a long connection, there, and there's it's kind of
There's a legacy.
There's a legacy, and it's kind of intertwined, right? The Molson family with the Montreal Canadiens. So it was a big decision. He had to be pretty, determined in making that change. But again, and perhaps you should invite him to explain what went through his mind. Obviously, I was quite close to the process with him in terms of reflecting on that, and looking at how it would get done. But ultimately, it was him. It was this decision, and yeah, maybe he'd be the best one to try to explain how he got to that point. But at some point, it became obvious that this was the move to do. Like when you're that close to everything that was going on, I think it became, in as much as it was a difficult decision to make, and a decision that was very public, and a decision that, right now, it's going well, and I think Jeff made the right decision in selecting the person that we've talked about before in terms of the new leadership group and all that. But it's easy right now in the fall of 25 to look back and to say, oh, it was the decision. Like it was the obvious decision, and he had to make that decision. Now it's easy, fast forward, 4 years down the road. But back then it's not obvious.
But when he makes the decision, so he makes the decision, and then what's the next thing? Is he looking at the leadership team? Is he looking at is it like what are the components? Maybe there's 5, maybe there's only 3. I don't know. Maybe there's a dozen. Like, what are the real core components?
Yeah. I think the first decision, because the leadership of a hockey group is the it's like in this case here in our organization, like he selected first Jeff Gorton, so that basically is the man sort of leading the whole hockey ops group. So he selected Jeff, and then afterwards, Jeff Gorton and Jeff Molson did some interviews to find a general manager, and then they selected Ken Hughes. That was in January, so it wasn't sort of building blocks, right? So Gordon arrived, and then he took the team as is. And then basically they started doing interviews, and then they've identified who is it that they would want as a lead of the hockey team as such, which is usually the role of a GM. And then they've done so many interviews with many different people, and then they ended up selecting Kent. And then afterwards they decided that they were changing the coach. And so basically one day the coach that was currently in place got let go, and that same day Martin St. Louis got hired. And it was very gutsy, by the way. Martin St. Louis had never coached at the professional level. Martin St. Louis was coaching 15 years old.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was like, what? But Martin St. Louis obviously is revered in this province because he is from Laval. And he is the guy Martin was never drafted. He landed in the NHL. He was 23 years old. Some guys they arrive, they're 18 or 19. He arrived in 23, so that's old, but Martin is just an unbelievable guy. And he could speak to any business crowd any day of the week and be super interesting. He believed in himself. Joined the league in 23, was very difficult. Was sent down, I believe, to the minors at some point. Anyhow, all to say that this guy, ultimately, through it all, was never drafted. And finally ended up in the Hockey Hall of Fame, captain to his team, won a Stanley Cup, and he's just an unbelievable competitor. Martin is just, he's just unbelievable. Every single player on our team can relate with him. You've not been drafted, I'm that. You aspire to be the most talented guy and to end up in the Hall of Fame. That's me. You want to be the captain of your team. That's me.
You win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, that's me. Exactly. Exactly. So there was a bit of iteration in the process that Jeff's went through, but all these coups were brilliant. The hiring of Jeff Gorton was super smart because Jeff is an unbelievable guy, and then the hiring of Ken Hughes is Ken has never been a GM in his life. He is a former agent. He used to be agent/owner of a firm called Cortex, and just super smart. Ken is smart. He's a lawyer by training. Smart, used to do deals, negotiate, used to represent players, understand the player. And then now he is our GM, negotiate on the other side of these players. And then Martin, never been a coach at the professional level, but unbelievable communicator, represents every single one of these players on the ice and communicates. That's great. And by the way, if you want to know more about that, and this is not a publicity I'm trying to make, but we have a show. It's called The Rebuild.
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen I saw the first season.
Exactly. So season 2 is there. So the behind the scene part is significant enough, especially in season 2, I would say, so that you can actually see how Marty is with his player. He's unbelievable.
You can see me doing this, but I'm drawing a line chart here on the steps. But it's and I, because for me, it's really want to make sure the listeners can visualize this in their business. And it's like, to me, guys, what exactly France is explaining to me is that Jeff makes this tough decision and that sits on him. So as a business owner, what decisions do you need to make in your business that you've been hesitating or maybe not had yet found the courage to make those decisions, and then come to a resolution to make those decisions. And then once you do, he really pulled out the org chart and went, all right, how do we fill the seats on the org chart? And what are we looking for? And it sounds to me like his vision is like when you say like Marty being the player, he's a player's coach. He's a player's coach. He doesn't come with the pedigree of winning X amount of Stanley Cups as a coach. Won him as a player, but doesn't come with the coaching pedigree. Kent doesn't come with the GM pedigree, but he is a
total outside the box.
He was a player agent.
Yeah, he was a player agent.
Used to representing
But the other side,
he was used to representing the players. So he's also a player's coach. And then I don't know the president of
Jeff Gorton. Actually, Jeff is when he joined the Boston Bruins years ago, he joined as in the communications department of the Boston Bruins, and then his role evolved there. And then he ended up being, I think he was the GM of the Bruins, if I'm not mistaken. And then he switched to New York, and he became the GM of the Rangers. And now he's our pres. Yeah, a lot of guts decision in there, by the way, just to give those key roles to people not having necessarily the background. And by the way, I don't want to bring this back to me, but Jeff Molson gave me the lead of his organization, and it's not as if like I had ran the Leafs before, or like the Flames, or like the Hurricanes, right? It was a lawyer that he's met in a boardroom like in 2009, and finally I'm leading his organization. So it feels like this conversation is about Jeff, but he is the one who's not afraid to make tough decisions, which are necessarily non-traditional decision, and getting outside of the playbook to decide on stuff that he believes, might work, and ultimately works.
Would I fair to say, like, because if I have to put a bumper sticker on this, because like as you draw your own name into it, which is, critical, because you're running the entire operations of the organization, but it's almost like, and like I said, I've not met Jeff, but it's almost like he comes from this heart-centered leadership because he's hiring heart-centered people. Like you're a very heart-centered, leader in my opinion. Like if somebody is going to say like, if you had to just put one thing on, your title, it would be like she comes from the heart. Like she's gonna drive from the heart, and some days that's not gonna look but you're pushing from like what's best for the organization, what's best for the people, what's best, and it's heart centered. And then it's like, and then he comes and does this rebuild, and drives really the same thing, because he's, you're obviously more than capable. Probably at the time didn't come with the experience.
Zero experience.
But obviously you go from, legal, which is an amazing role and all that, but now you're propelled into this bigger role in, a pretty male dominated sport. Mm-hmm. And that evolves over time. I'm just curious, like, can you share with, I think this is an important piece, and my outcome would be this behind my questioning, or this portion of the conversation, and is not only from, I don't want to really necessarily focus on being a female in a male-dominated industry, as much as, or also that if you're a male and you have women in your organization, these are also some things to consider. Just tips, tricks, like the difference between, the feminine energy and the masculine energy, the performance. You're a mother, so mat leave, all that kind of stuff, like how that all gets handled. and just the difference between men and women. There is a completely big difference. I kind of think I said it earlier in the podcast. Like men have like this one simple, really slow voice, and women have a whole bunch of voices, and largely we don't understand that. So when we get an opportunity to share that information, I love to take the opportunity.
Mm. Well, I mean, again, back in my days as a young attorney, I think first of all, I've alluded to that. Um, Typically, there was, let's say, 50, 60 partners at Simon Elliott, and most of those partners were men, let's say, and there was probably like a single digit number of women, so 7, 8, 9, like back then.
Mhm.
But that was one thing. But I mean, this was the reality we walked in, and I don't know that we would making such a big case out of it. But very early on, I think what was the most noticeable is that you'd walk into a boardroom, and I was very often the youngest. And come a negotiation for whatever, like there was so many like smaller dossiers, or the bigger ones, you'd have a senior guy with you, or more senior, like sometimes not only one but a few, depending on the magnitude of the file I was working on. But on smaller files, very often, like imagine like we're trying to sell, like we're the acquirer, and we're trying to buy a piece of land. This is actually dossier in Vaudreuil. Okay, it was significant, and it was millions of dollars, and I was representing a U.S. client, and they wanted to open some stores there, like as a let's say a franchise. Okay, and then you show up to a boardroom, and I'm in year 2. Okay, I'm basically 24 or 23 years old, and I'm there to represent this U.S. acquirer of that land. So it's a real estate transaction. And when I show up to the boardroom, there is another partner. I'm not a partner. I'm an attorney, and there's a partner, a very senior guy from another firm. And when he sees me, and this is a true story, when he sees me walk in and I introduce myself, and he is insulted. This is true, true, true. He's insulted because himself, Mr. Important, is negotiating with me like this baby lawyer, and he's like, I mean, like he's insulted. Like he's insulted. And he's actually rude to me, and he's not very nice. It's true. It's nothing marking, and nothing that is that important in my life, like zero actually. But I just remember that factually because this guy is super insulted that I'm the one there to represent the acquirer on this piece of land and all that. And I guess he feels insulted that it's not the senior guy that is the actual attorney of those US folks that is showing up in the boardroom. This guy doesn't have time for that, so he delegates me, and he's insulted. So anyhow, my point is that I've very often been the youngest. Yes, very often the only women around the table, but the women part to me has never made a difference because, okay, so you're a guy, I'm a woman, and so be it, and we're going to have the conversation. But as the youngest, you're less experienced. Okay, doesn't mean that you're not as smart, but you're definitely less experienced, because if you've got 10 years on me, well, you've got 10 years of experience, and I don't have that. So to me, the age thing has always been more significant than the gender in how I show up, and in how, and like, and whether it's making a difference or not. So to me, it was mostly that. Now, fast forward to now today, like I'd like to say I'm always the youngest in the boardroom. It's not true, sadly. We're all aging, but no, I've on the gender thing, I've never. I mean, very, very, very often this question is asked. Very, very often, like, how do you feel? Like because when I joined this organization in the fall of 13, like you alluded to that before, Wayne, there's the board of governors of the NHL. So every single team has a governor, and the governor is usually the owner. So the governor of the Montreal Canadiens is Jeff Molson, but the team can also identify alternate governors. So Jeff has named me alternate governor since I arrived here. The minute I arrived in the fall of 13, I was an alternate governor of the team. So come December 2013, I went to my first board of governor with Jeff, and you walk into this massive boardroom. I've talked about that before. Every team is represented, usually 2 governors at the table. It's a massive square table. And then you've got at the very end, like all the senior ranking guys at the NHL, with Gary Bettman in the middle, Bill Daly, and all the group. Let's say there's about 20 of them or 15 of them at one end of the table. and then there's the other side to the table, and then by alphabetical order, you've got all the teams. And so Montreal, we're kind of vis-a-vis, we're kind of in the middle, M, vis-a-vis like the commissioner on the other side. And I was by far the youngest in 13 again, because these are all the owners. So usually, you know, you don't own a team at like 40 years old.
Right.
So by far the youngest, and also like pretty much the only women on the team side. Like at the NHL, there was some, you know, some women working there back then and still today. So, but I mean, that is, you notice it because it's just a difference. It's a fact. So you notice it, but in the end, I just sat there and listened for the most part. But and people were all super nice and came and introduced themselves. And you know, Gary Bettman, actually the first one, who was super kind in telling me, by the way, because he's a lawyer too, and so is Bill Daly. And he said to me, you know, I remember he said to me, "Oh, great to meet you." Jeff had introduced me to him, and he said, "You know, good. You know, lawyers tend to do well here."
Right.
Almost as a joke, like, you know, me and Bill.
Yeah.
So, but no, I've never made, I've always tried to not make a situation out of me being the one of or the only women around the table. Because if I start to be conscious of that or create something around this, then I kind of just, I attract that kind of attention.
No, I think
And
I,
zero.
you know what? Look, I think that's exactly the point. That's the point of the question, and that's what I love about you is you don't make a deal out of it.
Never have.
And but the question, you know, so then it bodes to your ability to not label things, and which I think has helped you probably unknowingly or whatever transcend because you just show up as who you are, which is a competent, smart business person, and you don't see gender, and you know maybe in the beginning age because of an experience thing, but it's so. But I guess then the question then is that's how it should be. And a lot of people, unfortunately, do put labels. They put labels on a lot of other things, and it's like, so how do you like the advice? What's the advice you'd give to, you know, a woman in business who's coming up? Is like my wife is extremely competent and runs the operations of our business, and gender doesn't even pop into her. Like she 100% probably sees it as an advantage, actually. You know, I don't know if, and I don't even know if she would actually say that either, but it's like, I definitely see it as an advantage because I think that the feminine energy is way more powerful than the masculine energy, actually. That's not a gender thing. That's an actual energy thing. But I'm like, what would you say to people that are like, the women who are coming up to avoid
Falling into that trap
this
of
trap
like,
or
oh my
this
God.
pitfall of,
But again, it goes back to me, and I cannot be more honest when I say this and genuine, is like, to me, it makes zero difference. Why? Because again, going back to what we said at the outset here, if you show up and you know what you're talking, like, you know your stuff, like whatever it is, the conversation you're supposed to have, you know your stuff, you've prepared, you've read, you've thought about it, you've questioned yourself, you've whatever it is, like so you show up and I'm ready to talk about that. I'm ready to talk about like whatever it is. I'm documented, I've thought about it, I know the pros and cons of it, like I know I can kind of go this way, I can go that way. So what does it matter that there's 5 guys and like, who cares? I don't care. I really don't care. I'm happy I don't care. And I don't even really know how I don't care, because it's not something that I have to fight or battle, or I can, like, I'm smart enough to have come up with something to not care about that. I just show up, I'm ready. That I know I have that. Like, I know I have that because it's in me, it's in my DNA to show up ready. And after the fact, then I don't even have, what I'm trying to tell you, Dwayne, is that I don't have the, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, I don't have the merit to have a solution that I prepare so that I can, I have the merit to tell you that, oh, I'm proud of me because I do this, and then this thing goes away. I just don't care. I actually recommend, and it's a recommendation, but it's so not important Like, why should you feel conscious that you are? Why? Like, I'd be pretty self-conscious if I show up and I realize that I don't have my document or I forgot something, or like, like I like because I'm not prepared, because like, I was to show up at some meeting with someone and my colleague is not there, he's stuck in traffic, whatever it is, like he or she is not available and ready to come and do what we're supposed to do. That I'm conscious because I'm missing a part of what I was hoping to bring to this conversation, and I can't compensate for that. But the fact that I so don't think about that, I never have.
So if I was, and please correct me if I'm off on this, but if I was to pitch that back to you, what I heard, my interpretation of what you're saying to me is was what I heard myself saying was, you have never created a story
No, around that.
around the fact that gender has anything to do with it,
No.
in that would be an excuse for you, which we talked about for I don't even know how long we've been talking, but it's been but uh, and and that you won't allow yourself to have an excuse, so therefore you can't create that story.
No.
And 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 then but then the story for you is, I will be evaluated based on my merit.
100%.
Yeah.
And I would never want anyone to think that I'm there because of like I fit some box or whatever. Never. It'd be, how embarrassing would that be? And if I ever felt that it was that, I would probably not do it, because that's not what I want to be. That's not the role I want to like I want sort of to do or represent. And again, I repeat myself, but if I also was to create a story around that, I think I would give everyone around the table the perfect excuse to just sort of focus on that. And I don't want them to focus on that.
I'm not looking to have a gender conversation because I don't think it exists. I mean, shit. I probably 80% of my employees are probably female. Like I bet of the 450 that we have, I bet you it's got to be close to 70 for sure, just based on the industries that we're in. But I guess I'll say this to the audience, and I've said this before on many occasions, maybe not in a while, but the most powerful force in the human psyche is to remain congruent with how you identify yourself. And you can see in this conversation the weaving in and out of how you have created this identity for who you are, what you stand for, and how you execute and behave based on that identity is probably, what could I say? It's one of the most important foundational factors that you have, and that you would say, this is where my success has come from.
Yeah, I think so. And again, it comes out of, when you tie it back, small town, there's only one you, there's not some like, you are who you are, and you show up as who you are, and that's what people will know about you, and that's what people will talk about you, and that's who you will be. You got to be authentic and honest to who you are. It's 15,000 people. So like, there's only one way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, somebody once said to me, like, whenever you feel angst, in a moment, you are not present in that moment in the identity that you are facing it with. Like, for example, in an intimate relationship, like, would it be fair to say, if I asked you the question, do you show up in your intimate relationships in the same way that you show up in business? Or have you?
I have never thought about that. I don't know. I would think so. I would think so.
Do you find that sometimes you have to taper it?
I think people might maybe they would like for me to taper it, but no, I think this is, yeah, yeah. It's probably,
You show up across the board
I
like
think,
this is,
yeah, I
yeah,
think so. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, super
Yeah.
congruent with.
Yeah. Like I'm trying to think, is this different? I mean, no, it's pretty much the same.
It's, guys, this is like such a powerful, place to arrive in this conversation. When I reflect back on all the things that we've talked about, it's been a lot. Like, this has been amazing. Your insights and the stories and I honor your dad for how he showed up for you and that relationship you had, because it seems so foundational. And that family, that sense of family that you talked about is such an important factor. Yeah. And it's like, you said earlier, in one of the topics that we talked about, is I think it was in negotiation, is like sometimes you just have to go with the flow. Sometimes you just, like, it's faith, it's grace. And for you, like, you've had so much grace with family and early stages and building that foundation for you, and how it's formed you. And these are things, guys, that, like, you can form for yourself, because I know France, and I know that you've just continued to step up on all of those things. And that is kind of the big piece. It's like why you are so fond to me. Like, Tennille will tell you, like, I always speak so highly of you, and I have this, like, place in my heart for you, because you are so committed to who you are, and you just continue to step up and step up and step up. And it's like, it would be like a blessing it's a blessing to be able to sit with you and talk to you and kind of peel back the onion a bit and unfold it for people to hear, because you just project so much and offer so much to others around you. And your team is so lucky to have you.
I think, I think, it's, I'm very lucky to have them too. And I think I'm very lucky to be able to lead this. And about what you say, I mean, like, I don't know exactly what it is or how, but, like, what I know is there's a lot of, I'm trying to find the word. There's a lot of pride in in um, in continuing, despite the fact that my parents are no longer there. It's been 2 years, my dad, and a year and a half, my mom. But it's not just since they're gone, but even, all along. Like, I mean, I don't remember when I first had this idea in my head, but, like, this pride of trying to carry on what they've taught me or showed me, and also this element as a kid, I guess, I don't know if we all had that, but, like, to not let them down. It's very, very present, and it was present then, and it's still present. It's this thing where, and despite the fact that they're gone, I very often think about them, where, like, I would, I want to make sure that they're proud.
Well, I'm sure they are proud. That's for sure. There's no question about it. And when you say, like, it's, I don't know how it happened, or, I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. Well, it's obvious to me, and it's going to be obvious to the listeners and the audience that when they hear it, about how this all happened for you. You're such an impressive individual. Love you, kiddo.
Love you back.
Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for spending so much time. Thank you for your grace and your honesty and your vulnerability. Love it.
Thank you for the opportunity, Dwayne. Vraiment, thank you so much.
Yeah, no, thank you. Thanks for listening. I appreciate you being with us. If you found value in the show and know a friend or a coworker who could benefit from the conversation, Please share the link via text or on social media. Remember, each share creates a ripple effect of knowledge and inspiration. We'll see you next week.
The views, information, or opinions expressed by guests during the Dwayne Kerrigan podcast are solely those of the individuals involved and do not necessarily represent those of Dwayne Kerrigan and his affiliates. Dwayne Kerrigan or the Dwayne Kerrigan podcast is not responsible for and does not verify the accuracy of any of the information contained in the podcast series. The primary purpose of this podcast is to educate and inform. Listeners are advised to consult with a qualified professional or specialist before making any decisions based on the content of this podcast.